My name is Andy Atkins, and I'm a librarian at CRC, and I coordinate our OER ZTC efforts at our college. But each college should have somebody who's helping with that at your campus. I know Sarah is here today. She's at ARC, and I'm not sure about other folks from other colleges, but yeah, Megan's here too. Megan Ozeran from Folsom Lake College. She's your go-to person. And for Sac City, seems to be changing all the time. So I don't want to give out a name in fear of having that person be bombarded, but hopefully they are actively reaching out to folks at your campus.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Delmar Larson. I'll go over who I am in more detail in a moment when I bring up the PowerPoint presentation, but I want to make sure everyone has accounts. So if you don't already have an account on a LibreTexts library, I need to create a library. Unfortunately, it just occurred to me that I've created a whole bunch of accounts all on chemistry, and I know that not everyone is on chemistry here. Because I'm a chemist, that's not a secret desire that everyone should move into chemistry field. Let's just run with it in chemistry, and then we can shift you around after the fact into a different library. I'm going to paste in the chat the link to our formal request for accounts. So that's where you go to in order to request an account formally. I was under the impression that we had everything put together, but for some reason there's a gaggle of you guys that did not have accounts. And the way I created them is that they were local, and I'll go into what that means in a moment. It basically means that there's one of two ways in which you log in to get an account, one through your campus and one through our credentials. So with that, let me pull up a presentation, which I'm going to hope is going to be about 20 to 25 minutes. That will just get you an overview of things. And then we get our hands dirty, or proverbially dirty in a cyber sense. And such. So I have this thing open. There we go. Take the screen. I just want to make sure I can find out when people come in. Participants. Okay. I think that will let me see. The mysteries of Zoom always eludes me, even after 3 years. Okay, so this is the kickoff presentation workshop associated with becoming a formal member of the LibreNet. The LibreNet is the consortium that underlies the sustainability model for the LibreTexts project.
Hey, Delmar, can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
We had a request for closed captioning to be enabled. Okay. Are you able to do that?
I think so. Show captions would be fine enough. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think that's what. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. I should be on top of those things. Okay. I'll also pull up the chat so it's on my window. So feel free to chime in or interrupt in anything we're doing. This is a fairly informal discussion. Okay, it's a kickoff. So I had a set of topics here in order to go through that Andy requested me in order to target. The LibreTexts project is very expansive, and it's very difficult for me to capitalize or put it down into a 3-hour session, but I'll do my best right here. And you'll obviously be able to address any questions later on as we progress. So for those of you that are putting emails into your chat for making accounts, I'll make that after I do the PowerPoints because I can't do that simultaneously in giving the presentation. Okay, so who am I? So I'm a professor of chemistry at UC Davis. I've been here since 2005, so I'm just down the road or up the road, depending upon how you actually view things. My research focus is on ultrafast laser spectroscopies, mostly of photoactive biological systems. So I have a research laboratory with lots of lasers that do various things. I'm the founder and the director of the LibreTexts project. It was originally called the ChemWiki, and it was initiated back in 2008 as what's now referred to as an open pedagogy project involving students in my classes contributing to the formation of multiple textbooks. With the ultimate goal in order to supplant the commercial textbooks in my classes. I am the chair of the UC Davis Aggie Open. That is the UC Davis OER project that's been around for about 2.5 years. I am an adopter of OER, I'm an adapter of OER, I'm a creator of OER, I'm a curator of OER. And I emphasize those points because that, in addition to co-running the Aggie Open and also being the founder and director of the LibreTexts project, means that I wear a lot of different hats. And the way that I respond to people's questions will vary from which hat I'm actually giving the perspective of. It also means that I have a very practitioner-oriented perspective on OER. So I care about how things are actually implemented into the classroom effectively. And while I like a lot of the philosophical discussions that are done at the upper level, many times those things have very limited impact in terms of actually application out there. So when you want to know details, I'm particularly interested in discussing those things. So why do I do what I do? I do what I do because of these two pictures. This is a picture of the truck that my father owned, at least one of the trucks that my father owned, and this is a Denny's restaurant in Linwood, Washington, which is just north of Seattle. And the reason that these two are particularly important is that I lived in the back of this truck in the back of this Denny's for several years. So much of my childhood, I would be technically homeless. And obviously that comes with being poor. And the reason that I was able to get to where I'm at right now is because of affordable education. And that came from K-12 education through the state of Washington. It also came with community college education for my first 2 years after I graduated from high school, and then public education at the University of Washington. And then I subsequently went on to post-bachelor education, a wide range of multiple campuses that it takes a while in order to discuss, ultimately ending up in, again, public education here in the state of California. So I'm very driven in terms of doing what I'm doing, far beyond any other research project that I would be pursuing in my position as a faculty member. So what is the LibreTexts project? Well, we have a mission. Just like all mission statements, we took a lot of effort in order to construct it, and then I promptly don't use it. And I use this mission statement out there, much to the displeasure of some of the people on my team. So the LibreTexts mission is to implement a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of OER that is comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. Each of these 3 words that are bolded or the 3 C's are particularly important in defining our philosophy and our approach of doing things, as are the 3, or actually 4 terms in this parentheses that describes the practical application of what we are doing. So I just want to mention this a bit here. So we're implementing a community-built platform, meaning that we don't want to actually create something from upon high and say, this is what you need to adopt. We want people to be involved in that, whether they're students, they're faculty, outside experts, anyone who wants to contribute to the mission we accept with open arms. OER, I'll define OER in a moment. It refers to Open Educational Resource. It can be very nuanced in terms of defining. For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to refer to it as free or near free in order to access. Comprehensive means that while this was born out of a chemistry project, we have an interest in order to cover the wide scope of academia. So we have both a horizontal focus across multiple fields. We have a vertical focus across multiple levels from K to 12 all the way up to graduate level, which means that we have a lot of gaps that we need to fill as a community or as the LibreTexts project, and we're going through active efforts in order to fill those gaps. We also follow a no tech left behind policy. That refers to the fact that we're the basic essence of the technologies that we've generated to promote this mission, which we refer to as the LibreVerse, is run on mostly open source software. So as people in the community build new software or new widgets that may be used in order to build interactive educational resources, we'll integrate them into our platform so that the community within the LibreTexts is able to capitalize on them in order to build more advanced textbooks. I'll refer to the ultimate goal of the advanced textbooks as building the textbook of the future. Which I don't know what the textbook of the future looks like, but I do believe fundamentally it involves technology and using technologies in order to enhance learning and enhance interactivity. Lastly, curated, which is a very specific and very important emphasis in order to throw out there, in that we are not just basically a host of OER content, a publisher of sorts. Because we're in academia, we understand that the cycle associated with educational content is more than just being able to publish, but it's to be able to curate, to take content, update content for a wide variety of purposes, whether it means to fix bugs, and there are bugs everywhere in OER and even non-OER content, or to be able to take content and adapt it for use at individual campuses, for customizing populations, to introduce DEI or culturally responsive approaches, and a wide range of other needs that require us to be able to curate, update, and move forward. And that capitalizes on the fact that my team and I, the development team that is, we are academics and we care about how the content is being used, and we take ownership of all the content that's out there. And I use the term ownership very loosely here. Sometimes it's very light ownership, but the key point is that when people create stuff on the LibreText, we will actually go through and evaluate and run bots in order to be able to see what's necessary in order to bring it up to speed. So we're very active off of that, and that distinguishes us from other projects out there like Pressbooks and Manifold, which are just publishing infrastructures. Okay, so what is OER? So I mentioned that OER is a nuanced term. These are two definitions that are comparable but not identical. One from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the one from UNESCO, and you'll notice that they have similarities in that the Hewlett Foundation defines OER as free and openly licensed educational materials. Can be used for teaching, learning, research, and other purposes. UNESCO says that OER are teaching, learning, and research materials that are open, that are in the public domain or released with intellectual property licenses that facilitate the free use, adaptation, and distribution of resources. I will mention here that this release with intellectual property licenses that facilitate free use and openly licensed is essentially the same within the context of this discussion, which means that when people create things, they can share them. Sometimes referred to as the sharing is caring model of OER, that under the argument that collectively we can move forward one step at a time. If all of us do one step, we can actually traverse wide distances, and that underlies the aspect behind these things. So so why do we care about OER? Well, faculty get involved in OER for a wide range of purposes. Some of them may involve the need in order to be able to generate a customized material that suits their needs in the classroom, that there just isn't something out there that addresses the exact particularities of the way the class is taught or way the student population is to be able to capitalize on it. For the long time, for past 15 years, people have been arguing OER from a financial perspective, meaning that you can actually remove the burdens that students have in order to get access to their material by removing the financial burdens in order to get access to the material, and then that is useful for our educational mission. specifically, and this was a study that came out about 5 years ago from the Florida virtual campus that identified the detrimental impacts of high textbook costs. And I don't want to go through each of these things other than arguing that it's shown that students have identified that they haven't, at least in some cases, haven't purchased the textbook in the class due to the cost, or that they've earned poor grades or failed the class because they couldn't afford the textbook. Or they've actually used the cost of the textbooks in order to guide which classes that they want to be able to address. The key point here is essentially that while these things themselves are not explicitly part of the mission of academia and faculty, they become a de facto requirement for us to address because they impact our academic mission. Which means that every faculty member should be particularly concerned about this aspect that's out there. Okay, so we want to be able to generate and address and facilitate the construction, the curation, the adoption, and adaption of OER in the community. And our approach to that, again, is very practitioner oriented. We want to be able to establish not necessarily the policies behind trying to go about doing the best practices, but the actual technology that can facilitate that. And our approach in order to do this is to build an ecosystem of technologies that we refer to as the LibreVerse. And the LibreVerse, when people talk about the LibreText, is this, when people talk about the LibreText, they're talking about the LibreVerse or components of the LibreVerse of their interaction. The LibreVerse has multiple interconnected, pseudo-independently operating servers that all connect together in order to be able to provide a very powerful, in fact, I'll argue the most powerful OER infrastructure available to the community right now. And we're still growing and building it effectively. So this right here is a snapshot of the LibreVerse. The core of the LibreVerse are our libraries. But before I get into that, let me just talk about some of the aspects behind the LibreVerse. So the LibreVerse has three primary focuses. One is to facilitate construction of OER. One is to facilitate dissemination of OER. And the other one is as a learning platform, a mechanism in order to evaluate learning by the students, and then to use that as a mechanism to enhance learning by providing data and such in order to be able to manipulate that. So different facets of the LibreVerse are focused, or as we build different components, we focus on different facets of the LibreVerse. The upshot of what we're trying to do within the libraries, which is the core component that hosts our textbook content, is to build a bigger bucket of Legos. The idea behind here is that their content in the OER landscape. So let me rephrase that. Many people can create OER in many different ways. In fact, a lot of faculty have what would be considered OER on their computers right now. So when a faculty member creates a worksheet on their computer and they're willing to share it with people without having any issues, that's OER. And there's a lot of that on a lot of computers in a lot of campuses in America and even the world. What we're trying to do is to take that, try to find that material and centralize it. In addition to utilize other people's OER content, capitalizing on the O in OER, harvest it, which is our term of saying bringing content into our platform, standardizing it so it has the same interactivity. So in other words, most people here have some comfort or some experience with trying to cut and paste from a PDF and understanding how the formats don't work out right. That hinders utilizing resources that are in that format. Keeping things standardized and centralized provides a mechanism in order to facilitate greater adoption, adaption, curation, and customization of OER. So we're building a bigger bucket of Legos where we take the OER content and we standardize them, and then faculty can come in and they can take the bits and pieces and combine them together into building whatever they want. And if that bucket of Legos gets big enough, with enough pieces on here, then you're only limited by your imagination, not by the content that's being created. And that is our goal in order to be able to make this bucket as big as possible. So when people need to customize, you don't have to go through much effort in order to customize or to build new textbooks for new classes. So we centralize, we standardize, we make these things interconvertible. We can build collections of OER, which is another way in order to describe textbooks. That provides great flexibility in order to customize, mix, match, share effectively. And because it's within our infrastructure, it's curatable. So you can go in and you can update that. The opposite of something not curatable would be, for example, a series of PDFs. And having to cut into a PDF is very difficult, if not impossible, depending upon the tools that you have accessible. So the core of the LibreVerse are our libraries. Like I mentioned before, we have 15 interconnected libraries. Each library is a wiki library. And we chose wiki technology because it is the best technology for large-scale collaborative construction efforts. Which is essentially what we're trying to do, capitalize on the community in order to be able to build and disseminate content. This is the chemistry library. Most of the other libraries are organized in a similar fashion. We have at the top of the library 3 categories. Content can be stored in campus bookshelves, central bookshelves, or learning objects. The central bookshelves are the bookshelves that we as a development team curate, maintain. Other people can come in and update them if they're part of our harvesting or curation team. And they provide an opportunity in order to be sort of the canonical set of books. For example, the OpenStax books will be hosted in here. The campus bookshelves, it provides a customized interface or customized repository for individual campuses in order to be able to store their books. Now, oftentimes those books are remixes, that is, using existing material from other sources, typically within the central bookshelves, but it could be anywhere, that are then formulated in order to be able to address the needs of that faculty member, or that student, or that department that's out there. And lastly, we have content stored in learning objects. And these are contents that are not well suited as a textbook collection, but they may be some other repository-like approach. For in chemistry, that would be where we have our laboratories. So we have our wet laboratories, we have our dry laboratories, we have our virtual laboratories, we have worksheets, repositories that are not well suited here, but you can capitalize and use it effectively in order to build your course or to build your textbook. The key point is that we've collected 500,000 pages of content, or we've built much of that. We've certainly edited every page that we've brought in some way or another in order to standardize it and make it effective so that it's as easy as possible for you as faculty member in order to capitalize on this in order to address your needs. So you don't have to start from scratch. Okay. Everything that we do has to be accessible by legal mandate and also by ethical mandate. So the accessibility, the Americans with Disabilities Act requires us not to discriminate on the basis of disability. That reflected online is via what's referred to as the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. And as you edit content on our pages, it's important in order to keep in mind how to make things accessible in order to handle a wide range of disabilities that students may have. To facilitate that, we have a series of tools in order to be able to address text and organization, videos, homework, interactive elements, and other things that they all need to be addressed accordingly. When you go to one of our pages, when we actually start showing you editing, in order to facilitate that, we have a real-time editor that can go through and identify the top 7, 8, I'm not sure what the current number is, of issues associated with making a textbook, making a page compliant with WCAG 2.1. There's a wide range of criteria involved in order to evaluate full compliance. In fact, 81 criteria that's out there, but this right here covers the top 10 that's particularly violated by compliances out there. We have bots that are set up in order to do large-scale curation efforts. That lets us evaluate textbooks that have been created after the fact, and then run and modify the pages in order to be accessible. That's out there. Still, nothing beats a in-person evaluator in order to be able to address that. We disseminate content via a variety of different sources. You can obviously create a textbook and share the textbook online. That textbook would typically be shared within your campus bookshelf. but you can also get physical books. So this is a general organic biology textbook that Diane Bennett was using at Sac City before she retired a few years ago. And she used it quite successfully for several years. You can distribute PDFs. You can embed your books into learning management systems, into Canvas. You can get print files if you want to upload and modify them for print versions, but we also have a automatic bookstore that provides the opportunity for students in order to purchase the books directly by going to, they don't go to the publisher directly, they go through us, and then we hand it off to the publisher for them to print it up on demand. Because we're not making any profit off of that, typically these textbooks are in the order of 10 to 12, 15-ish dollars, depending upon if it's paperback, if it's color, or how many pages and such like that. We're able to download our libraries into Raspberry Pi boxes, what we refer to as LibreTexts in a box, and distribute it that way. So if students have limited internet access, they can actually dump the book into here and run with it that way. This is not the most up-to-date version. We've delivered millions of PDFs since 2020, and about 5,000 physical books through our bookstore to date. Okay, I'm going to skip over the Jupyter Notebooks, or actually I'll be quick with this. The Jupyter Notebook system is one of the components of our LibreVerse. It gives you the opportunity in order to embed executable code into your textbook. Again, going back to this goal of building the textbook of the future, which involves a textbook of technology. This gives the ability in order to build widgets that students can interact with, and they can see the code, because coding is particularly important for modern STEM education. This right here is in my upper divisional quantum mechanics class, where students are writing in Python. Actually, we have it spit out in Python, but they can come in and they can modify any of it, run it, and then see the output that's coming here, both from educational perspective, but also seeing the underlying engine that's below the hood that's involved in that. The next quarter in this class, students then do some very simple editing here in order to be able to get the output that's put out here. It's not meant to be a programming class per se, but we do want students to have exposure over here. And such. Because this is a community, we actually have within the Jupyter Notebook system 30 different languages. Most of them are traditional programming languages like C++ and Julia and other things, not just Python, R, Octave, Sage, math and such. But because it's a community, we can capitalize on other people's code. For example, this was a couple years ago that this individual, Free Radical, and I don't know his name, I just know his avatar, he gave me some code in order to be able to address distillation within this infrastructure. So the next day I was able to go to my class, because I was teaching it, and have them learn a bit in terms of how to visualize distillation. That's for, in this case here, isopropyl isobutanol. And then we were able to advance a more sophisticated approach dealing with azeotropes and things like that. If that doesn't mean anything to you, that's perfectly fine. Commons and Conductor. So this is one of the technologies that's part of the LibreVerse. I sometimes refer to it as the Master Computer Program, the MCP. So if you remember Tron 40 years ago, which was a long time ago, this is the master program that we use in order to control the rest of the LibreVerse. You can log in. The Commons and Conductor has two interfaces. One is the front and one is the back. The front is the Commons that acts as the catalog, where you can catalog books, libraries, collections, homework, under development. We have two flavors. One is the central LibreCommons that we run. The other one is a campus commons that's a branded instant to LibreNet members. So there is a Los Rios campus commons, and I'll pull that up after this presentation so you can take a look at that. The back end is the mechanism that we use in order to handle our project management. That's the Conductor. That is private facing. You need an account in order to access this. The Commons, you don't, or the front facing side, you don't need an account. It's a project building tool. In fact, it's the primary tool that we use in order to interact with other projects that are being built. We use it as a communication tool. It can be used as an alert setting. So you can log in and you can say, tell me when a book has come up that has chemistry in the title. or that has physical chemistry, organic chemistry, can be more specific. So when something is added to our corpus, you'll get an alert, an email telling you that something's available. It's where we handle harvesting requests. So if you have existing content that you want to contribute to the LibreVerse, or you want to have other OER content brought into the LibreVerse, you can request it via a harvesting request on the catalog. This is also where we facilitate adoption requests. That's important for keeping track of who's adopting what, how many students are involved, and there's the statistics important in order to be able to motivate campuses in order to be able to continue in requesting funds either from a campus, district, or a state level. Facilitates peer reviews, communications, I already mentioned to you here, communications across multiple LibreNets. So if you find a project that you're working on, if someone else has built a project or is building a project on a different campus, you can actually identify that and facilitate handshaking in order to be able to make it so that people don't have to recreate the wheel on different campuses. I'm going to skip over that. This is the front end for their Libre Commons, which again is just a catalog of the books that are available. We have about 2,500 compiled books, again, with about 500,000 pages on our repository. This is the back end. This is a book that we've supported for a while to build a Spanish healthcare OER manual. And this gives a little bit of feedback in terms of being able to identify project construction, peer review, accessibility, and such like that. I encourage you in order to be able to play with that, but I'm not going to be focusing on it during this presentation. One of the other components that you have access to within the Commons and the LibreTexts as a whole is the analytics. I'm a very data-oriented individual, and I want to be able to look at efficacy of OER by looking at data. So we have released, but we have a few bugs that we're ironing out here, a learning analytics dashboard. So faculty can come in order to be able to identify how your textbook is being used by your class in a variety of different ways. Now, dashboard has two streams of data. One's connected with our homework system, which is called ADAPT, which the state of California has invested in, and you guys have free access to. And the other stream is how students will interact with your book. So if you ask them to read a book or read a chapter, you can then go in and see how they're actually reading it, how long they're reading it, when they read it. And from that, you can get actionable information in order to guide pedagogy. For example, this is about a decade ago. I taught 2 back-to-back 500 student classes. And then I was able to identify how students were reading pages in the book per day. And you can see that right before exams, students read a lot. They were cramming. Now, cramming is not a new concept, but we were able to identify which students cram and then identify how cramming impacts their studying. So it's part of a research study. Identify students that cram on average performed at 10% lower than students that didn't cram. So from that, I was able to guide a subsequent class over the summer into, instead of midterms, I did weekly quizzes. As a way in order to get the background up. I can't compare these classes, different students, different cohort, different speed, but nonetheless, it provides an example of taking data that was collected here and using it in order to guide pedagogy. This is an example of the dashboard that is released. Version 1.0, and just basically shows the same thing, asking this is last winter's term when students read the book, and I looked at a specific page and identified when students read that page. There's a wide range of other components associated with the learning analytics, and if people have questions, I can certainly go into it, but I don't want to focus on it now. We have several mechanisms to facilitate communication. One is our forums that's available at forums.libretext.org. You can sign in, and this is where you can come in and ask questions for the community and for the development team in order to be able to address those things. We also have a Discord channel at chat.libretext.org that many of the student developers on the team are on there all the time, and they like doing a little bit of support for faculty because it flips the table for how they're normally used to interacting with faculty in order to be able to guide a wide range of questions. And this gives you more faster feedback than the forums. We do have office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10 o'clock using the same Zoom link here, zoom.libretext.org. And I encourage, if you have any questions, just come in. It's a first come, first serve basis, just like a academic office hours. So I will mention again that we have a homework system, but that's not part of this conversation. If people do have a question about that, feel free to ask me during one of the breaks. So let me end with what I started, which is our mission statement. We're implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of OER that's comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. And with that, we're going to start getting into the dirty details of things. So I do have and I'll share this this PowerPoint file with you guys, so you'll have access to it. There are lots of links off of here. Most of them I've addressed at one point or another. And I'm going to skip over that. And we do have a series of more specifics that are involved in here. So does anyone have any questions other than you'd like to have some accounts, and then we can move forward from there? Okay. So here I am logged in. This is a standard instructor account. The account gives you the ability to edit in your sandbox and only your sandbox. You can access your sandbox underneath your name right here, which says your sandbox. So you click on that. When you click on it, it will automatically create the sandbox. And it has a set of other things here. This one right here shouldn't be there, and I will be removing that in a moment. This gives you a set of training tutorials and references. We've been meaning to expand this out. This is options that we have whenever we make a workshop, a long workshop, in order to let people decide on what they actually want to focus on and what skills they want to master. This right here was a LibreFest that we had a 1.5 years ago. That is just a schedule, which really should be deactivated again because it's not overly important for you guys. LibreFests are our semi-annual workshops that everyone is invited in order to attend, where we'll go through either a 1-day or a 3-day session dealing with advancements and some of the basic principles that we'll be discussing right now. This right here is the sandbox that's connected to the campus or to the account. This is just, again, a reference material. So you have the ability to edit inside your sandbox. This is an empty sandbox. I know many of you are currently in the same sandbox I am right now, although many of you also have your own personal sandbox that's in place. Now, before we actually get going in terms of building and manipulating things, the one thing that's going to be a useful resource is the construction guide. So on the left-hand side, we have this toolbar. We're going to be decommissioning this soon and providing something a little bit more advanced. But right now, you have access to a wide range of different features off of here. I will mention that under developers, if you click on that, you'll then have some of the features that are associated with editing. You can only see developers when you're logged in. If you're not logged in, you don't see developers. The top of this thing is the construction guide. If you click on the construction guide, it will actually go to the construction guide online for you to review. Alternatively, if you were to expand this out, you can see the table of contents here, and you're able to go to any part of the construction guide. You can get a physical copy of the construction guide. It costs $12, $13. It's not a bad idea in order to get access to it. And then you can go through and access any components that you may need here and such. So that's how you access the construction guide. You can also just do a search on Google, construction guide, LibreText. It will go straight to it because Google knows everything about everybody at any one time. Before I introduce the remixer, I should just talk about, well, there are two ways in which we want to start. One is to create an empty book. The other one is to start to create a book through the remixer. Now, the remixer is a tool that we use in order to be able to facilitate taking bits and pieces of these Lego blocks and combining them together in order to build the book that you're doing. If you want to create your own book under developers, there's this thing called New Book. If you click on it, it just basically starts out with a new book. like quantum chemistry with applications in molecular spectroscopy, everyone's favorite topic. And it will create an empty section, and that will be the book that you can work off of. This is not the only way to create a new book. Like I said, the remixer can be used to create a new book, but this right here creates this book, and it looks inside, and it has a front matter, a back matter, and it has an empty first chapter. It has a title. It's all ready to rock, to expand, to augment, and such. I recommend this be in the first step rather than using the remixer in order to create these things, but this is not a bad way in order to go about doing that. So if you don't want to do that, let's talk about the remixer. The remixer is one of the most important tools that we have in order to be able to commandeer and utilize this massive corpus of 500,000 pages of content and further. We built this about 4 years ago. Recently got some awards in Open Ed Global, and you can access it under the tools section with the button that says OER Remixer. Again, there are a handful of other things here. Ignore those for now and just click on the OER Remixer. So this is the OER Remixer. This is version 2.0. Version 3.0 should be coming out near the end of spring, which will have a few additional features and a few streamlined components here. The key aspects, again, is to say you have this corpus of 500,000 pages. Lets you have the ability to drag and drop and say, I want this page to be in this chapter. I want to make this chapter of my book. I want to add this other page from a different book, and just basically start to grab, drag, and drop and build your book directly in a graphical user interface. So there's a toggle switch here in terms of new remix mode and edit remix mode. New remix mode will make the book from scratch and save it. And the edit remix mode is what you use when you want to reopen a book that already exists. So in this case here, we're going to build a new remix mode, and I'm going to build a title off of it. I love the American River. I pop that down there. Ignore this thing for now, and you have two windows. You have the window that's the library panel that lets you go through any of the libraries. Right now it's on the chemistry library, but any of the libraries you can grab through and parse and find content that's stored in the central bookshelves, content that's stored in the campus bookshelves, which are named, like American River College. I can expand that and say, well, there are 2 humanities books in the ARC campus, or I can look and see what's in Sac City, assuming there's a Sac City here, and say, okay, well, here are books that have been created. But you can go through and find content in learning objects, in this case here, interactive libraries, art libraries, supplemental materials. It doesn't matter. The key point is that you have access to this massive corpus that you can browse in order to find. On the right-hand side is the book that we're creating when we create it. Right now, it doesn't exist yet. It only exists once I save it to the server. Now, that's a 2-step process. You're pressing the button twice. But the key point is that whatever you're doing here doesn't exist anywhere except for on your personal computer until you save it. So let's build a book. Well, this is the generic book, and it made 5 chapters off of here. I'm going to delete these chapters. Those would just be blank chapters. I'm going to just create a book that's entirely remixed from existing material. And then we'll start talking about how to use the remixer for other things. So let's say I want to grab, I'm going to go back to chemistry, and I'm going to find something, actually, into the central bookshelves. So I'm teaching a physical, no, actually, what am I teaching right now? I'm teaching a general chemistry class right now. So I can parse through and say, okay, well, I want to grab OpenStack's 2nd edition book. This should be expanding it. There might be a lot of things open up on it. Where's my, okay. Well, whatever, I pulled up the 1st edition right here, the 2nd edition. okay, it's expanded. So we had a little bit of a bump there. So I can grab this chapter, Essential Ideas of Chemistry, which has multiple subsections here. And I just click on it and I just drag it over here. And I'm going to place it right there. And what I did is I just basically moved it from there, from the library over here. I can't ever manipulate anything in the library. I can't delete anything here because I'm just grabbing from it. And this one here will be saved in my book, and my book will only be saved in the sandbox, period. So you can't save it anywhere else because the sandbox is meant for you to be able to edit and build without anyone getting involved in what you're doing, except now that multiple people are using the Los Rios district, you can sandbox, you can see what other people are building. And you can come in and you just drag it off of here. I can then say, well, I prefer chapter 5 to be the next chapter. So I can dig that, I can pop it right there, and now chapter 5 was brought over. But what you'll notice here is that what was chapter 5 here is now chapter 2 here. It's because I have auto number set on. An auto number is meant to make your life a lot easier, so you can grab content that can be from any number on any chapter anywhere and brings it over and process it. In this case here, I brought in a whole chapter, but I can also bring in a section or page. I can say molarity should go right there. And now I've added it there. And what was 3.3 molarity now becomes 1.4 molarity. Again, I could turn this off if I want, and it wouldn't automatically number there. ML, I think you just moved in here. If you go to these credentials, on that library using that username and that password, and then you're able to work with it. Megali, there's lots of Spanish in the humanities library. Rachel, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So if I do exactly what you're showing now for this semester, I want a remix of a book that's already there, but I would use different chapters in a different order, maybe pull some OpenStacks in with the other one. But can I do it for my students on a week-by-week basis, like work on building the book throughout the semester,
Yes.
but have it available for my students for week 1 and week 2? And how does this relate to save to server or not, and
Well,
publishing it?
there are a few things that are involved in that issue. So you could pull up any book that you have editing rights to and manipulate it. So when the book is moved from your sandbox into your campus bookshelf, that's when it's production, so students can find it. We compile the book, which means we make a PDF with a common cartridge file that you can then embed into your learning management system and a handful of other things. You can come in and you can always modify this, but then you need to recompile the book to get those other things that are out there. Those are not made on the fly because it's a very intensive process in order to create those things. So they have to be made, they're made dynamically once a quarter, just to make sure everything is up to date. But if you modify things, you need to manually compile, which you have access to. But the one caveat here is, and this will be mentioned at the end or near the end of the list of things that I was to address, is that when you embed these things into your learning management system, into Canvas, and you manipulate it, Canvas doesn't automatically manipulate it. So you have to export it as a common cartridge and import it again in order to be able to reflect it. And Canvas doesn't have a very convenient way to delete modules in mass. It's a flaw associated with their user design. So you have to delete all their ones and then bring them in. Or you can manually build your modules in Canvas. And if you do that, then it's not going to be an issue. And I'll address that later on. So if that doesn't make any sense right now, the key point is that at any point you can update your book. And if students are only looking at your book online, then they get instant update. But if you have other mechanisms that are subsequent that they pull in, that may have an impact off of there. For example, when they compile it, we also make the bookstore. So if a student purchased the book at the start of your class, then the book, obviously the physical book changes.
But if I do it for this semester and I just have it in Canvas, I could use those pages in Canvas for the students and build the textbook week by week.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
There are a few details off of there that I like to talk about, but what you're describing is, I mean, if you're remixing content, it's not too painful, but you're describing a process that I call riding the wave. And riding the wave is building the book while you're using it. And if you're riding the wave where you're building the pages on the book, it's an exceedingly painful process. If you're remixing existing content, say, okay, well, I just want to tweak this around, I want to structure this and like that, it's less painful, but of course you have to continually update it as you move. But let's discuss that a little bit later on today, or if you want to go into more detail, you can come to office hours and we can talk about how to go about doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa, sorry.
Just okay, thank you. Yeah, so partially to Rachel's point, and in part because what you're showing us right now is sort of saying I want to take these pages from mixing and matching, but I'm right now when you're just compiling them, you're just reordering them. And sort of, so in one sense, you could do that within Canvas by just saying, I'm going to take this link and put it in as either a link or a page in a module. So, and then. But
there's one thing that I didn't mention here. There are actually several things associated with it. But the one thing that is important here is that the remixer gives you the ability in order to manipulate and change the numbers here. But when you change the numbers here, if you do things right here, which we are standardizing it, it will also change all equation numbers, all table numbers, and all figure numbers.
Right.
And that makes life a lot easier for you.
Right. So I'm thinking, well, and that was what was Rachel was saying, sort of like if you're doing it kind of on the fly. So I've used pieces and parts, for example, in other classes with lots of my own material, but it did give me a sense like now I have a really clear outline that will make this process of creating this remix much easier for me because I've already sort of have a sense of where I want things. But I did that kind of in context the first time I did that with my students, right? So yes, you're right, the numbers weren't quite right, but I actually was like, oh, this is the ordering that makes sense. And now that I have that, this for me is like the next step is this remix thing where I can actually create something more coherent. But what you're saying is that then that would be something that would get could be more static for, say, a future class.
Right. And so you're touching upon this issue is that nothing has to be static. So everything is dynamic. You're always able to go in and modify it in order to suit your needs. And certainly in the beginning, the issue is what is the best material and what's the best organization in order to suit your needs.
Right.
So before remixing, and I didn't mention this because I went straight into it, it's recommended that you get a vision. You get some idea about what you're actually creating. And that could be somewhere along the lines of, well, this is the book that I'm using right now, so I want to rebuild something in the structure. That's a perfectly fair way in order to do that. What I argue is that before building the book, you want to build a remixing map.
Got it. Okay.
And this is an example of a remixing map that came in where someone was saying, okay, well, I'm going to build module 1. Actually, Josh modified it. This is the map that I typically like to give here. So this is a introductory chemistry book in Lubbock Christian University. And the things that's in yellow is the book that they are creating. And the thing that's in green are existing pages on our library. Now, most of what they're doing follows a specific single book. That's a text map that follows Tro's textbook, where they say, okay, 1.1 is 1.1, 1.2. So they like it. And then near the end, they say, well, they really want to have density to be discussed at the end here. And whereas Tro's book teaches it at the end of second chapter. And you can see, okay, now chapter 2, what they want in their first section of chapter 2 is really 4.1 of chapter of their book. So you can see then they start to deviate and they go to different books. Like here's a Brown book that they switch to, and different organizations. Here's an OpenStax book and so like that. So this is a map. This map only exists for in order to prepare what you're doing. It can be done in a variety of different ways. You can write it on an Excel form in this way here. You can write it on toilet paper. It doesn't matter. The key point is that it gives you an idea about how you want to organize it. You don't want to use the remixer as a mechanism to browse these books. Yes, you can come in, you can double click on here and say, well, what does that page look like? But it's going to be a very painful process. It's better to actually go through the book and peruse it before you start to use the remixer. But once you've done that, like you've mentioned, it's not static. You have the ability to come in and say, well, this is what I thought I liked it, but I don't like it. I want to add this, I want to modify this. The second one aspect is that we're only modifying pages. The remixer only modifies the page, doesn't modify the content on the page. That requires direct editing of the page. So I can come in, I can say, well, this chemistry book really needs a little bit of physics. Because I'm a physical chemist, that's not unreasonable. And I feel that any introductory book needs some special relativity, because of course, every student needs some special relativity. I'm going to make it the first chapter. And now chapter 6, what did I call it? 6? Yes, 6 of this book by Special Relativity by Kroll in the physics library was brought in and it's put here. I have the ability then to delete. I don't want to deal with Doppler shifts. I don't want to deal with duality. I don't want to deal with this chapter. I want to grab a different chapter. So you have the ability to drag and drop this thing. It's just like any graphical interface to a file system. Again, you drag here, you drag here. You can't drag back because you don't have editing rights here. This is just basically showing you what you have. Everyone's cool with this concept? I can only see Talk. Hi, Talk. Okay. 2 thumbs I'm willing to go with. 3 I'm willing to go with. Okay. This creates, again, a front matter and a back matter. That's important because we're building a book. And a book needs to have some context in the collection there to dealing with title page, info page, table of contents, and such. The table of contents is created automatically from the resources that you create here, you put here. Don't need to worry about that. Entry pages for the glossary and the index are put here. The index will be dynamically created if we actually have all the meta tags put in place. Don't worry about the details behind there. The point is that the index may actually be extensive or may be minimal depending upon the material that you're bringing in. And the glossary you may need to grab from a different source and such. I will also mention that we are playing now with AI as a mechanism to build glossaries for books. So you can actually build your book, press a button, and then have AI build the glossary for that book, or utilize existing glossaries that you're able to grab and pick and choose in a very similar fashion in order to build your book. More on that as AI starts to revolutionize academia, much to many people's displeasure. So I have the ability to create a new page and made a new page and put it down below. So while each one of these pages that I've created here, that's brought over here, is a copy of what exists here, this is a blank page, which means that when I create it, will have nothing on the page. I can then go in and start to edit it. This is convenient. If you're making a book that's completely new, you're not remixing at all, you can still use the remixer as a way in order to scaffold out the book. You can have 5 pages in this chapter, 5 in this chapter, and just kind of flesh it out. And then you go in and you edit the pages on the content after you've done this. I then have the ability to set a delete. Now, you'll notice everything here is green. The expression is gray stuff, which is automatically put together. Green means that once we save it, they will be created new. Okay? Because these pages don't exist, if I delete a page, it just deletes it and it's put in place. So let's create this book. Actually, let me delete this book a little bit. Okay, it's just 2 chapters. So I'm going to save it. Saving is always a 2-step process. Again, recognize that the everything we've done here is on our library. I want to revise here. I have the ability to save as a file that shows the map that I've created if you don't want to create it, if you don't want to save it to a server. But most of the time I recommend just saving to the server. And it gives you an overview. The first step says this is what's going to be done. And the second step is then giving you final permission to do. And it's meant to be a 2-step process so you can get an idea about what's going to be done here, especially when you start doing a variety of different things. So when I press this button, it's going to make 4 blank pages. 14 pages will be copy transcluded, which means copied from the original content. Copy fork, ignore that. I'll talk about what the difference between transcluded and fork is in a moment. And the structure of the book is relatively sound. Because this is a file system, you can organize your book in any way you want. Right? You can have a chapter, you can have another sub-chapter, you can have a unit, you can have subunits and things like that. It can be very complex. The problem is that when you take that book and you embed it into your learning management system, Canvas doesn't accept anything more than 2 levels when you bring them in. That's it. So if you build a structure that's beyond 2 levels, what we do is we take it and then we shift it around in order to make it 2 levels when it comes in. So we don't remove any content because Canvas doesn't accept it, but we have to structure things around in order to be able to reflect that. And this is meant in order to give you some feedback to say, you have a good book that's organized typically by chapters and sections, or you have something that's a little bit more complicated. You can still create it, but we just recommend that there may be some issues associated with that. So I'm going to save to server, and it's basically going to move forward. While I'm doing this, I can click to the preview, which tells me what is going to be created, which is not overly important here. This gives me the progress of what's going on. Now, again, I can only, the remixer only saves in the sandbox, period. So it's creating a book that's titled, what did I title this? I can't remember what I titled this. Oh, I Love the American River. And then it's making a chapter. It's making the front page matter. You can see each of these things, and it's done. So the more pages you have in your book, the longer it takes in order to save. I can then click on this button right here, and it will open up the book. And this is the book that I've created, which is a beautiful book that would probably make students very unpleasant or displeased in order to review that. So now I have an existing book, which is fine. Now I'm able to come in and edit it. I can grab that book and reload it in the remixer. So I'm going to kill that remixer. I'm going to load up the remixer again. And you notice that I load the remixer at the top of the book. That's because I'm going to no longer do new remix mode. I've already done it once. I don't need to make it again. I'm going to switch to edit remix mode. That would be the equivalent of load remix. And I just need to find the book that I want to load up. I can go my sandbox and I can find the book that's there. So there are 3 books that have been created here. I made both of these. I made this with the remixer. I made this directly. I can click on that and I can press remix mode. And it pulls it up. And it looks the same as the new remix mode, where you have the ability to drag and drop. But in this case here, this book already exists. So now I can come in and say, I think this book needs to have some organic chemistry. So I'm going to bring acid-base reactions and put it right there in between special relativity and essential chemistry. Now, because this book exists, everything in green is going to be created when I save it again. Everything in orange is changing the title of that page because the auto number changes from 2 to 3. That's just to let me know what's going to happen. I can also come in and say, I don't like this page. I could delete it. You'll notice that when it did that, it then made it black, red with a line through it, telling me that that page is being deleted. If I were to go to waves and do it here, you'll notice that not only is that page being deleted, this page is turning orange because the auto number then shifts this up 1 notch. So again, this is meant for you to know how you're structuring, you're moving your books around as you delete things, if you keep your auto number on. There are a series of options available for auto numbering that you can click on here to talk about prefixes if you want them to put in there and where you start the numbering and such. But nonetheless, this is what I have done. I can delete that there. So when I save to server, it's a 2-step process. I can also do the same things before. I can make a couple empty pages just like I did before. This is just a way in order to curate the content. Okay, you create it once and now start to manipulate it. So I'm going to save to server. And now this is a little bit bigger than before. This is, I'm adding 14 pages that are new. I'm not moving any of the pages. 7 of them will be renamed. One second, Debelina. We can modify meta tags on the page, like keywords or learning objectives. None of them are going to be modified, and I'm deleting 3 pages, and then I'm not touching 8 pages. This is the summary. I look at this and I say, this looks right. This is what I want to do. And then I press this button, because once it's done, I can't revert it, because it has a whole lot of things that are being involved off of here. And I'll click on this and then address Debelina's question. You have a question, right, Debelina?
Yeah, so I have a question. What if I want to take a section and edit a picture that has been posted that is somewhat not
So that's
correct,
talking
and
about
I want
editing. That's talking about editing the content on the page. And the remixer is only editing pages themselves. So think of this as your computer, right? You have a whole bunch of files. You can manipulate the files and the structure, but in order to edit the content on the files, you have to open up the file in order to be able to do that. So the two skills that you use on your own file system in order to handle your stuff, it's the same thing here. These are only pages, but then when you want to edit the pages, then we'll talk about that, which we'll get to in a moment.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions so far?
Can you use this to write complete original work, a book?
You can create a page, empty pages that you can then edit the pages afterwards.
But then you can bring in references and things to.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get to the editing of that there. So we had some flaw, something happened here, and I'm not entirely sure what, but I'm going to ignore that for now. And I could click on here. And here's the book. I've introduced some acid-base chemistry. I can click on the chapter. I can then edit here and say, okay, here is the section. And now I have the ability in order to edit pages. So that is the remixer as a start. Let me make sure what the timeline is here. Okay. So if you're creating a new page, an empty page, which I did right here, titled new page. This is an empty blank sheet of page. I can edit the page, and it comes up with an editor that looks just like the editor that you've seen for a long time in Canvas. In fact, it used to be the same editor that was used in Canvas. Canvas switched over last year to their own internal editor, which had similar features, very similar to Google Docs. It has a few additional features connected with LibreTexts itself that's connected to her, but you can edit content as you want here. I love cats. Cats with hats make me happy. And you can edit just like you would any other place. I will mention that this is a graphical interface. On the back end is what the actual page is. And the page is in what's called hypertext markup language. That is the language associated with books on the internet, pages on the internet. And this is very simple. It just shows you this thing. It's not important for you necessarily to know that this exists. Well, it's not important for you to know how to edit it, but it's important for you to know that this is a graphical overlay on top of what's called a markup language. And then through here, you can do a wide range of different editing. So if I save it, I can just save it to the server. In the same way, like with the remixer, when you save it, if you don't press that button, it doesn't get saved to the server. It will save it to your client, to your computer. So if you load up the page 10 days later, if you haven't saved it, it will remember that that page is there, unless your computer has cleared its caches and such like that. I can come in and then edit the page again, and I can do lots of other things. The The construction manual has a section dedicated to construction, basic editing. And I can encourage you to go through each of these steps in terms of editing, asking questions about how to do things like embed videos and such. The three primary things that people care about are typically images and videos. And there's a bit of complexity associated with that. So I'm going to take an image and I'll put it on my desktop. You want to always have your image on your desktop before you embed it into your book. And all you need to do is just drag and drop it. And it automatically gets on your page. You can do the same thing by looking under elements, and there's this thing called, where are we? Image that you can upload directly, but I almost never do it. You notice I had to remember where it was because drag and drop is the convenient way in order to be able to do that. Someone asked about videos. You can go to the same thing where I can say, let me look at a video. I can attach a video here. It right now automatically goes to YouTube. If you go to any other video infrastructure, you have to type in the embed code for that. That's unique to it. I'm going to keep it with YouTube just for this conversation, ML, but I understand the concerns associated with that. So I'm doing a search. I'm never going to give you up, and I can insert the video right here, and there we go. Now, keep in mind that the video isn't really inserted onto our server. It's really stored on YouTube. We're just funneling YouTube directly into our site. That would be the same thing with almost everything. We're streaming through it. My recommendation is if you have videos and you don't want to go through YouTube, because YouTube has issues that people have. My biggest issue has to do with ads that disrupt the studying experience. You can store the videos on our studio site, which is one of the entries to the LibreTexts that hosts what's called H5P studios. Okay, I can save this.
Do you worry about where these images are stored, or you just drag them in and wherever the file structure stores them, that's fine?
Well, the storing, it's a multifaceted question. It requires a multifaceted answer. So when you drop a image onto here, it goes and is stored in our server. It actually stored in a secondary server, not the same component that hosts the text. And at the bottom of a page has all the attachments, and that tells you what you've loaded up. Like in this case here, I've loaded up something called MindTouch JPEG, and I could even go in and modify the title. Where is it here? There we go. Or I can even say this is an example of a house, in order to do these things. But these things are saved off of here. If you were to do something like this, let's say I copy this from a website, and I paste it here, with lots of junk. It looks like I have pasted this image onto my page. It shows up there, but really I have not. It's actually still stored on CNN's website.
It's just got a pointer to it.
Yeah, it's what's called hot linking. Your browser knows to go somewhere else to bring the image in. So actually, we're not hosting the image, and therefore we're not in violation of copyright by doing this. We are in violation of typical decency on the internet in order to be able to hot link these sort of things off of here. The one issue if you do something like this is that if CNN brings this image down, then your pages has it removed.
So I keep my own images in a file that I've created. I might want to use them on 5 different pages. In Canvas, I just have a file that I know where they're at, and and so I can go there and get it and put it in another page.
Yeah.
This, I don't, it looks like I don't have that capability.
No, actually you do. So if you do an image, if you find that image somewhere else, so you have to find the page that has that image. Where are we here?
But over time, it'd be easier for me just to keep my own file of images and drag them whenever I want them to several pages.
It's
Then
one
hunt
way.
ar-
There's one way
And
to
hunt
do it.
around the book for an image I won't remember where I
Yeah.
put it.
But if you actually put a title on the page, you can do a search for that title. So
Okay.
most likely, if you have a title that's connected, you can do a search and say, actually, I don't remember what we had called that book, but if you did something like chemistry, right now it's pulling up chemistry of sunstream.png. So if you actually keep track of the names of your pages, of your files, when you dump it in, you're able to find it and then add it, and it's all centralized. So when you update that image, then every page will be automatically updated across there.
Okay.
Alternatively, you can just drag and drop each page, but that does add redundancy if you want to be able to do a large scale editing, which I think is where you were going.
Yeah, yeah. Now I have another question.
Uh-huh.
You get ready to, you're gonna save the book where it's at that point. Let's say that you wanna say, I wanna save that book. I wanna save that book and then have a second version of it. So if I play with the second version, I still have the first one. Because you said when you save that, you lose that first version.
Yeah, you can copy the entire book.
You just
Yeah.
rename it to a version
Yeah.
1, version 2.
Yeah. So you have the ability under options to copy,
Okay, there you
and
go.
then you just basically, you make sure you copy all the children below the page, not just the page, so it's recursive. And then you just title this whatever, 2,
Yeah.
or if I write 2,
I
right?
would
And
think
then
that would be pretty common to want to.
you can, alternatively, you could pull up the book in the sandbox and then resave it there. But this is the best way. Just if you're just doing something like that, is just do a copy. So you have the ability in order to do, move, copy, delete, ignore, export, and import. That's not important for you guys. In fact, I should probably remove that too. And the forker deals with this concept of transclusion and such. So, ML, I'll talk about the studio in a moment. Did I get your questions, Joe?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. There's a wide range of different things associated with editing. I think I killed it. I don't remember what page. I have the ability to change page names using the remixer. I can also change it right here, where I can say this is page 2 or whatever, that number. This is the title that you see. This is the URL that you see up here. So you can change both of them, or you can lock them together off of here. I recommend using the remixer in order to change all that completely in order to save a bunch of issues. There are other things that are involved here. You can introduce boxes, like here's an example box, or here is a emphasis box. So we have a range of different boxes that are meant to be sort of asides in the book. And there are accessibility issues. I mentioned this one accessibility issue, that this will do a search in order to look at headings, alt text, tables, links, color contrast, labels, abbreviations across the book. Because this book here, okay, so it's telling me that there's no alt text for this image. So I need to be able to add an alt text. I can double click on here and I can, oh, this has an alt text. Did I not read that right? Image alternative name should not be the same as the file name. I need to take a look at that. The hot linking may have actually have a different interface than if it's local. I can skip over this and go to the next one. Oh, maybe that's where I was looking. And I can see that this right here, it needs an alt text. This is a house, which is not a very good alt text. This is probably more decorative than anything. And I can go through and process. Now it says that it doesn't have any accessibility issues and I can save it. within the criteria that was given there. It's recommended that as you edit, you also run your accessibility check every once in a while, just to see if what you're creating it meets accessibility criteria. Okay, so what we
choose a book and import it, is that already guaranteed to be accessible?
if it has full compliance on it, then yes. But there are we have 500,000 pages. So when we bring in content from other sources, it takes a while for us to be able to update the accessibility. We go through and we do preliminary checks off of there, but the only real guarantee that you have is after the fact, if you have an accessibility person in order to review it. If we had everything static and we weren't constantly embedding to it, we would be able to get to that steady state. But the reality is, as we bring everything in, we come from other sources, and those other sources don't have the same standards or the same level of expectation for accessibility than we do. And it just takes time for us to be able to update them. But we are working on ways in order to be able to update them effectively and at scale. So I will mention in the conductor for the project that you have the ability to look at the criteria associated with the book. So I said I wasn't going to go to the conductor, but I'll just mention this quickly. If you go under a project like here, it's able to grab, this is a Spanish project. And actually this is, let me go to the, here's the healthcare project I showed before. This again is the management tool in order to build the book, which I recommend everybody to use. But the accessibility right here gives you a matrix associated with every page and criteria that's used in order to evaluate it. And then people can come in and say, yes, I've evaluated all text contrast ratio is like that, and flips it over. Some of these things we can do by humans, something we can actually use computers in order to do, in order to evaluate. This gives you this massive, it's called an accessibility compliance review matrix. So you can go through a book and check to see if it's been reviewed effectively across the board. This is, again, a time-consuming process. It's one of the reasons that most OER doesn't have accessibility review put in place. It's just basically what training the students, not the students, the faculty have in terms of building it. And the publisher is typically not in the business of curating the content. Like what I was mentioning, we care, we want to be able to update these things effectively. And we do go through these with bots and such in order to update them. Okay, so what did we come up with? We came up with the ability in order to remix existing pages from our library to build a collection that will save a book in our sandbox. We're able to then edit pages on our sandbox. I do want to mention one thing that's associated with remixing before we actually transition to how to use the book outside of here. So I brought in a book, a page on phase. And what you'll notice that this thing here deals with some phase associated with some things. At the bottom of the page has our auto attribution requirement. So you have the ability, in order to change the name and pitch your picture, if you want an avatar or anything, onto the page, because you've remixed it. But you don't have the ability in order to claim that it is 100% yours, because you took it from somewhere else. And you have to deal with the requirements of the open license of the content that you brought it from. And the number one requirement in essentially every open license library, although not every open license, is to have attributions. And this one here has an automatic attribution that's always in place. It says that this content was created. So let me phrase that. Let me take a step back here. The top level of this page here says it tells you what the attribution is of the page itself in your book. So you have the rights to rename it any name you want. You don't have the rights to necessarily change it to any license you want. And that deals with a bigger picture of licensing, which we don't have time in order to go into. In this case here, Benjamin Crowell put in there, I'm going to take this and I'm going to change the author to myself. So I'm going to refresh this. I don't know where my picture is. Okay. So This comes with a bar that's at the top here, which is a branding bar. It's not meant in order to be the licensing requirements for accessibility. It's meant to just give people an overview of things. The bottom is meant to handle accessibility criteria for legal reasons. And basically what I said is that this page right here, 1.2 phase is shared under this license that was given when I brought it in. I'm going to say it's curated by myself. I have a link to the original content, and it used content that's from this source here. If I copy from different sources here, this thing will start to add a list of various components. So it gives what we refer to as auto attribution. And you're not going to be able to delete this at all. And you can't legally delete it because that's part of the requirements of the open license that you pulled it in. Whilst you have the ability to change the name and the license here, you may or may not necessarily want to change the license on the page itself. But we assign licensing per page, not per book. That is fine and dandy, but what is more important from the context of editing is how to take this page and to edit it. So I'm going to edit this page. Now remember, this page was created by the remixer. There's some page settings here. I'm going to hide that. And I'm just going to edit the page. And what you'll see is not much. You have a little bit of a code here, and you have this reference here that tells you where the page came from. This is what's called transcluded. This is really saying that the page is somewhere else. The content of the page is stored on a different page, and it's not stored here. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, this gets into the issue that Joe brought up, is how to effectively handle curation at scale. So let's say that I have 20 faculty members that are bringing the same OpenStax book page in their book. And I find an issue with OpenStax pages, which we found lots of issues with OpenStax pages that we had to update. So I can go into the primary page and I can edit it. And then everyone who has transcluded pages to it, their content will automatically be updated. So why do we go about doing this? Well, you have probably some familiarity with this sort of concept before on your computer. You may be familiar on PCs with shortcuts. If you're on a Mac or Apple computer, they call them aliases. If you're a Unix person, they call them symbolic links, where you can build something that looks like a file or a directory, but really, and behaves like one de facto, but really is pointing somewhere else. And that makes it easier, so we just don't have massive duplication of pages that you don't need. So if you're not editing this page at all, why should we actually duplicate it? It makes it easier for us to update and curate it collectively so everyone can benefit from it, rather than just having everyone have a copy of it. This is actually a bigger issue, I think, in the OER community, in that you have a lot of people and a lot of campuses, faculty members that are building projects. And if you're actually having the same book reflected 30 times in slight permutations, it's difficult in order when someone updates a specific page that everyone else can benefit from. This makes it easier for the sharing is caring model of OER, and more importantly, that we are not doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Who's the person who, when they make the change to this page and it changes to everybody else's, there's only got to be one person that has that rights.
Well, so it depends upon where you got that source. So if you bring everything from the central bookshelves, it's our curation team and the development team. So in other words, it's only a small set of people who are involved in curating that.
But when you edit this page, it's not, and it changes 20 other faculty members' pages, they edit theirs and it changes it back?
No, it's only bidirectional. It's only one unidirectional. So if I go to this page right here.
So there's a hierarchy of who the curator is.
There is a trust factor that we will curate our content effectively. And we haven't had any problems with that. We don't go in and we don't delete whole sections or anything. If there's an equation that's wrong, we'll go in and modify that. If it requires some clarification, we go in to do that. We don't do large scale editing on the page, so that you don't have to worry about your page being reflected.
Now,
So
when
for
you
example,
when you say we, you don't mean a faculty member in the department. You mean
no, I
we.
mean the curation team.
Right, okay.
So you don't have editing rights here. Even
Good, okay, I see.
I have editing rights here, so I can come in and I can edit, and I can say nothing is a scalar. So this is the page that's transcluded to this page over here. So if I refresh this, this now reflects that thing. Now I'm screwing around with that because no one's probably going to look at it in the last 30 seconds, so it's not going to have much of an effect. So it's a trust factor if you in order to keep it like that. Now, let's say you don't trust me. Let's say you don't believe that I or my team understands phase properly in this thing. You can take this page and when it's transcluded, it has this little symbol right here. And if you come in and you go under options and you press the forker, you can fork this page. Make sure you enunciate your words if you actually say that out loud. And when you press forker, it says, do you want to fork this page? And just like the fork in the road, it now has taken this page and converted it from transcluded to forked.
And now that's your page.
And now it's your page.
Yeah,
And
that's
now you
good.
can edit it and customize it as you see
There you
fit.
go.
And I
Okay.
recommend doing this when you need to do it, not by default across the board. So now if I come in and modify this page, it's not going to modify that page. And when you copy on the remixer, it copies by default as copy transclude. So when you see a page that you don't know how to edit off of here, you want to fork it in order to be able to do it. And you know, this one right here is copy transclude. That's there. So again, if this is designed in order to provide the flexibility for you to customize it, but the utility of central curation in order to bring it across the board.
That's beautiful. That's just what you want.
It's necessary for doing things at scale. And so far, we're the only people who do this in the OER community. I will also mention, since there's a little bit of technical questions, if you take these pages and you restructure them and move them around, we have what's called an automatic redirect. So if you go to the old URL, the URL will change by the title where it's at. It will then get redirected to the new URL. So you don't need to worry about lots of issues of people finding a page that you gave out that you then moved around and it's like that, which is also another powerful component of our platform. Okay, so showed you how to manipulate pages, restructure pages, delete pages within the remixer, handle the pages off of there. You could title the renumbering pages all with the remixer. It's a very powerful, simple tool. You can then go into the pages and you then can edit them. Editing will take a little bit of effort because there's a little bit of standardization across the board, but by and large, you should have some comfort if you have the ability to edit in Google Docs or Word in order to be able to edit here. Now, let me again make sure that we have this thing. We have another 45 minutes. I presume I can power through, or do people need a short break? People still there?
We're good.
Okay. Okay, so now this is the book. I've created this in my sandbox. Let's say that I am ready for prime time. I want this book to be pushed into my campus bookshelf, whichever campus bookshelf that you have. So you just send an email. We're probably going to have a button on here soon, but you send an email to us and say, this is my book. I want this to be pushed in the campus bookshelf. And then we will move it to your campus bookshelf. So in this case here for chemistry, we've made a bookshelf for a wide range of campuses that are part of that have been on board. that's getting kind of big. So we need to figure out how to make this a little bit more palatable as we grow, and we're growing uncontrollably right now. But I can, let's say I'm in Sac City. I used to be able to recognize the logo really quickly. There we go. On our side, we will publish the book, which means we take the book and we put it here in the Sac City bookshelf. But that procedure is super simple for us to do, but you don't have editing rights on this bookshelf, which is meant in order to preserve the integrity of everyone else's book. So we will do that for you. And typically it takes a day or two. If you need a rush, then you ask and say, I need this right now, go for it. At the time that we do that, we also run a series of bots over the pages. One bot is meant in order to clean up the page in order to standardize the style. We call that the Brad bot. It's named after Brad Pitt, and it makes the pages pretty as actually procedures and makes the standardized across the board. So, for example, if you have lots of different font sizes or different fonts, and it removes those sort of things. Another bot that we run over is the accessibility bot in order to check to see if certain accessibility aspects are addressed. It's just a default component across the thing. That is meant to complement, but not take the place of the real-time accessibility checker that I talked about before. And then we have a range of other types of things. One is to run what we call spray paint, which is meant in order to make it so that auto attribution is set up right. So if you copy text from one page into another page, the auto attribution follows through. And that's just meant in order to make sure that everything is consistent, standardized, move across. Again, like I mentioned here, our game is not to just give a platform for people to publish things. We care about the curation of the content and making sure that things are up to standard, because if you create a good book, someone else may want to use your book. And if it's in a different format and a different style, it makes it more painful for them to be able to use it effectively. So let's say that we have a book here. So this is Marissa Agnew's, Alviar Agnew's book. This is Introductory Chemistry, Chem 330. She built this a few years ago. Who am I? I'm not me, am I? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had special powers and I don't. Actually, I don't. So anyways, so once you have the book and it's been properly published, it will then have a range of features associated with it. So he has the ability of people to download the entire book directly. That comes from compiling, which is part of the publishing process. I have the ability in order to, this is going to be folded into here soon. You have the ability to get a common cartridge file, and that's what you use in order to upload it to Canvas. I was asked to show you that, and I'll show that to you in a moment. You can get a zip file, which gives you a PDF of every single page in your book. That may be useful for a variety of different purposes. You can be, this will automatically generate a entry in our bookshelf. This book is 800 pages, so we can't get a physical copy of it. So if I want to be able to make this print up in a physical book, in order to handle the limitations of the printer, I need to either split it into different volumes, or I need to go through the book and polish it in order to make it a little bit tighter in order to fit into 800 pages. And that's just the reality of physical printing. You don't have those issues with PDFs when you do things entirely online. You can get the files if you want to upload directly to your own printer, including the cover page and such. You can, it provides opportunity of an adoption report. So you can provide feedback on how you use the book, or if anyone else uses your book, you can then track that. Peer review is useful as you build things through. It provides a mechanism for students or faculty to come in and provide some feedback on a series of questions. The campus administrator and the owner of the project has the ability to customize this rubric to suit their needs. This right here, I think, is the BC Campus's rubric. It's not overly sophisticated, but there are other people who have more targeted components in their question their rubric. And the donate is if people want to give us money, which occasionally people do, but we're not terribly aggressive in doing that. So let's talk about embedding this into Canvas. So we have a variety of mechanisms, again, to disseminate this content. So I'm going to download the import to LMS. That's not good. Okay. We've been having some problems with our batch server, so okay, this is embarrassing. Let me try this one.
Try ARC, Linda Zarzana.
Let me check this one if I have this already. Okay, this is grabbing that. I need to find out what's going on with those books. We've been having some issues as the number of books have grown on. We had to expand our batch infrastructure. So this generates a what's called a common cartridge file. It's a IMSCC. And this right here packages up all the pages into this little compartment in what's called actually a thin common cartridge file. And I can go to Canvas, and this right here is just some course that I teach. I have all these small courses that don't have full faculty, and I can embed them. So the way I embed them is I go to modules. Wait a second here. Sorry.
I thought it was under the import process.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember. I'd done this before and I now forgot. Now I can't find my Canvas.
If you go in settings, I think you can start an import.
So we have a video of it in our
On the right-hand side, there's import course content.
yeah, okay, there we go. So I can come in and I can select a common cartridge package. I could find the file. And then I'm going to grab all content and then I'm going to import it. And it's going to go through this thing. It may take a few moments. I think it requires some queuing in order to be able to make it work. Looks like I did something earlier this year. And this is just basically the timeline for my Canvas in order to implement this.
What's the difference between a common cartridge and a PDF?
A PDF.
I mean, if you download the PDF.
Let me show it to you when it's actually imported here. Okay, so now I go to modules. So what it did, it common cartridge or thin common cartridge. A common cartridge is a wrapper that you can put lots of stuff into that kind of brings it all together. If you are into computers, that would be like a tarbell or a tar file for Unix. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. You can throw things into it, and then it's a specific format that you can then use primarily for academic purposes in order to bring things over. That has, books, chapters, pages, images, question marks, homework, and things like that. So what this thing here just generates is modules that will have links that go out to the LibreTexts site. So if I click on here, it will then bring up the page that's entirely in the LibreTexts site. This is not actually stored on Canvas. This is still stored on our site. This is like that hot linking I was talking about before. So when you update it on our site, it will automatically be updated on Canvas.
And the link validator in Canvas is able to handle all that?
I actually don't know what the link validator is.
The link validator checks that every link in your course actually links out to something.
Yeah, Joe, this is actually, it wouldn't even be processing the link validator because these aren't links, these are embedded pages.
Yeah.
This is what's called iframing, which is different. So it doesn't go through here. Now, we do have our own link validator. We call it a dead link checker, and it will deactivate any dead link.
Okay, that's good. Just as long as I don't, dead links are just an issue every time in your own course without that link validator. So as long as you're doing it on your end and I'm doing the rest of mine, we're fine.
Yeah. So we run it when we compile the book in order to see, and we kill the links that are out there. It's one of the issues that we have that we didn't, like 15 years ago when we started the project, we went through a lot of effort in order to bring in content into our library, but many people couldn't understand why we were doing that instead of just putting links out to their content. And the reason for that is we didn't want to get involved in link curation because when they delete their pages, then all the links become useless.
Yep.
And the only way to preserve that is to have control over it. And that's what we did, and we brought it in. Now, it's not so much of an issue, but 15 years ago, people were wondering why we were going about this procedure. Link rot happens. So the more links that you have across the internet, the more you have to deal with link curation. And link curation is not a fun process. So if you keep things internally referenced within LibreText, then we are standing behind the integrity of those links in order to ensure that they're on, they're good and they don't die and such. And I already mentioned this redirect infrastructure that we have in order to be able to address it.
So
But this
Tamara,
is-
I just had a question about the integrity of the LibreText server and stuff. So does this mean that on occasion, if there's a, I don't know, power outage and wherever
It does.
compromises? Okay.
It does. So this is so one of the bigger issues with centralization is what's called a single link of failure or single point of failure. So if the internet goes down, then we have an issue off of here. Now, if you want to, if that's an issue, if you have internet issues off of that, then you want to download the PDFs and share it with the PDF form. We can, although we haven't done that, make a common cartridge that will embed the actual image itself. But you don't have the ability in order to do a lot of more advanced technologies. So if you want to embed H5P or other interactive things, those things won't come in automatically. And such. So it's a trade-off in terms of how you actually build it. And we've been reasonably good so far with doing it because the infrastructure that we have to host these things is the infrastructure that's used for large company enterprise level activities on Amazon Lambda or Amazon Cloud. So it's like the best of the best in order to have access to these things. That being said, we are up 99.99% of the time, but there is, every few days for half a minute or so, we do have a dump. And sometimes we have catastrophic issues, like if it rains a lot, which is actually, that's not the issue. We've never had that issue. But if the servers happen to be in an area where inclement weather impacted it, then you can imagine that's the case. But Amazon is pretty good with lots of redundancies and such with their cloud.
Is PDF sample size, is the PDF file size reasonable enough to size wise? Some of my PDFs get big enough that there's an issue with sending them out.
A typical page, like let's say I'm going here.
No, the whole make a
the whole
PDF
book?
of the whole thing.
It's largely a function of how many pictures you have
Yeah,
and the resolution of your pictures.
all
that you
images.
use. Yeah.
As soon as I put images in, I just bloated it up.
Right. You can always downsize them and a few other things that we do in order to be able to make it work. So books typically are on the order of about 40 to 60 megabytes big. But if you have a very big book, it has lots of pictures. For example, there's a botany book that the OERI infrastructure built a couple of years ago, and that's 700 megabytes big. But it has the most beautiful pictures inside of it. And we didn't downsize it because we thought it was important for the actual image, important for the book in order to have that quality of images.
Are the equations and things that you type in saved as images or saved as some software saves those as images?
They
so it really bloats it.
Yeah, they're not saved as images. It's JavaScript. It's what's called MathJax.
Okay, then it won't bloat it.
No, they don't bloat because of those. And we're going to be updating the MathJax to MathJax 4 in the next month or so once it goes into production. So it'll be the newest version of it. We have an interest in order to maintain the quality of these things, which is part of the reason, because we're subject matter experts and we use what we make. We have a desire in order to make sure that it's up to date instead of just getting by for things. Okay, so I've embedded the books in here, and like I said, if I edit the content on the LibreTexts site, it will automatically be reflected here. But if I actually delete the page here, then it will this link on Canvas will be dead. And I don't know if the link validator does that or how Canvas deals with that. I personally don't use Canvas except for as a mechanism in order to distribute content. I prefer to use other technologies that are part of the LibreText for doing what I want to do. But that's just a personal preference, of course.
Sorry, could I just interject? Is it possible for us to give our students accounts onto LibreText to access the textbook, or in case we wanted to bypass Canvas, or does it need to be done via Canvas?
Oh, no, it doesn't need to be done on Canvas. So all you need is just the URL.
Oh, okay, of the textbook.
Yeah, and they don't even they don't need an account.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The only reason that you may have an account is if you want to start tracking analytics. So if you want to identify how the students are doing, you could flip a switch on the book, and that gives you this rule that says, content is added, please log in with your credentials SSO, which is what we had lots of problems with you guys. But they can come in with their Google Doc or their campus and they log in, and then we're able to track this student is looking at this page for this period of time and such like that. And that right there is just standard operating procedure for instructors of record for the class. You can use that for doing studies, but you need the IRB approval in order to be able to authorize.
Okay, thank
you. Actually, I logged in as me here, so I have a little bit more stuff that's involved. So this is the class that I'm teaching right now. Okay, so that's how you export into Canvas. Okay, I mentioned campus bookshelves. Let me talk about, I'm going to close off. Actually, I'll keep that open. I mentioned the Commons and Conductor. So I went to the Commons here, but I didn't actually go into detail. So this is the Libre Commons, which is our term for the central commons that we maintain. So you can do a search through all the books that we have available. You could do search on any library right up here, but it does the search only on the library. If you want to do a search across all the libraries for the compiled books, you go to the Commons in order to be able to do that. So if you bring in something that says calculus, and it'll come up with 43 books of calculus that have calculus in the title, and you can start to take a look through and say, okay, what do you like? What is there about these books? And start to review them and process them. Because Los Rios is part of our LibreNet consortium, you have your own campus version of this, or district version to be correct here, which will then identify the books that have been created and compiled for your campus across all four of your, in your district across all four of your campuses. 4. Sorry. So in this case here are 71 or 73 books that have been created over the last few years for here. This is for the entire district, but under the option that says collections, those books are then partitioned up into subsequent campuses. So you can go in and say, okay, what are the books for Sac City? And those have 29 that are compiled here. And what are the books for American River College? And this right here can be delivered to administrators and such and say, here are the books that students have access to on my campus. That's relevant for stakeholders, for arguments, or just generally being able to find the books that are relevant for your own campus. Each book that's compiled or entered in here has an entry that you can see on the front. And it has something in the back, which is the conductor page for it, which is the page that you use in order to be able to organize these things. So then again, this doesn't require an account in order to see that there is a book. This is the book for Business Law 340. Brian Mom had used it. It's in the business library. Here's the generic license across the board. It's Sac City. We can identify what campus and what district. If a student or faculty member adopts it, they can initiate an adoption report. You can do peer reviews. You have that same same 6-entry breakdown that you had on the page itself. And then what you have right here is a licensing breakdown on each page. So it says that 60% of the pages have that license. 40% of the pages are undeclared. So they essentially need to be reviewed, and then the license needs to be applied to it. The reason that we do it this way is that we provide licenses on a page-by-page level, not on a book-by-book level, because that gives you the ability to remix content from various sources and not have to worry about a single license that covers the entire book. There's a bit of complexity associated with doing that.
I just wanted to clarify, if a student were to be given a link directly to access a textbook, then he or she could potentially download the entire book as a PDF.
Yeah. Was there a question there, or was that a statement?
Oh, I'm sorry. So just a clarification question that that any potential student can download the entire textbook as a PDF.
Yes.
And okay, so that's actually a good thing, I think, because then they can read it offline. They don't need to be connected to the internet.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Or they can get a physical book. We will have an option, not necessarily soon, in order to download the book onto a phone. That can be used offline, just like that LibreTexts in the box infrastructure.
That's
and
great.
That would accompany the Adapt phone app that we will be releasing in a few months. That's meant for the homework system that you can then, do polls in class and things like that, or do homework on your phone and access the camera and such. That it'll be a complement. It'll be a suite of phone apps. We're just still in the process of building that.
That's great. Thank you.
This course, Business 340 Business Law, it may or may not be the real business law that was up there in the general Libre library, right? He may have taken that in there, he or she, and modified it.
Yes, I think he modified it. I don't remember much. Yeah, he did it a few years ago.
Right. So I'm just saying there could actually be 3 different teachers all referencing a calculus book, but they could be slightly different calculus books.
Well, if you customize the book for different faculty, you basically are building another remix. They can still have the same material, differently organized, or erase some material or add material onto it. But each of those books has its own entry in the catalog. So if I were to go in and see, so I should be specific here. This does a search automatically through the central bookshelves. If you want to do a search through all books, where are we? You need to identify, where are we? The campus bookshelf. And now you can say, I want to do a search through and find any books that are related to Larson.
Okay.
So here are the books that are related to Larson. These books, like this one right here, is used by several faculty members. So they will have different names typically connected to it, like Koski. And that's her version of the same book, but slightly perturbed. So you have the ability to customize it however you want in order to reflect it. We don't, by default, do a search through the campus bookshelves, because you'll have typically, like you mentioned, let's say 10 books that are all very similar to each other. So if you're looking for original content, you'll get upset having to go through and seeing the same OpenStax content in book after book after book. So we separate out things that are predominantly remixes from things that are central bookshelves that are original content, because when you're trying to find original content, you don't want to cut through lots and lots of copies of older content. And that's what you experience, for example, if you go through like the Pressbooks directory. They have lots of these content, just like we do, but we separate them and they don't. So you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels trying to find original content. So, okay. So what I was talking about here is your campus hub. You get a free account off of here. It's completely free. When you log in, you'll see the same thing that you'll see if you were to log into the central conductor. But in this case here, I'm looking at pinned projects and I'm looking at past projects that I have edited. So these are projects that I'll always be able to see quickly. Each project has a characteristic feature. So let's say I took this one right here. So this is, like I said, has saved us lots of effort and time and made my inbox a bit more palatable. So any project that's compiled has a conductor project behind the scenes. You can think of it as back page and front page off of here. You may or may not have used it, but it is created. And this is a good starting point, a recommended starting point for any project, is to be able to create these things. You can then add members to your team. So in this case here are close to 10 people that are on this project. They have different roles: leads, liaisons, members, auditors, which gives them the ability to do different things or see different things. You have the ability, in order to give some feedback on stuff, like here's a team of 5 faculty that are building these things. But more importantly, we have a thread infrastructure in order to facilitate communication. And this is our preferred way of communicating about projects, not via emails about projects. So for example, here's a discussion dealing with anatomy applications, because this is meant to be, actually this is the Spanish stuff, but we're dealing with what are more advanced technologies that we want to introduce into anatomy. So that identified various resources and say, we can look at this, we can buy this. And then it's just basically a standard thread that you'd have in a forum, but you can have this discussed on different threads for different aspects that are there. Alternatively, or to complement it, we have tasks which you can then expand out in order to be able to break down what people should be doing. This one here is broken based on chapters. That could be on a handful of other tasks that are out there in order to be able to coordinate them. I don't think they've done much. It's better for me, probably, if I want to show you this, I should show you how I handle this for a big team. Actually, I've already deleted it. I've been deleting. So this is a project that's not a textbook project, but it's perfectly fine in order to use this as a management tool for non-textbook projects. This is building the solutions for a general organic biology question bank that we didn't have solutions to, or we didn't like the solutions because they weren't extensive. And I had a big team of students that were involved in order to do these things. And in this case here, they had to go through these questions, solve the questions, build the tutorials in order to evaluate them. And I had conversations dealing with them, addressing this specific question, chapter, and then I can go in and say, okay, what's the state of affairs for this specific one? And they can come in and have the correspondence off of here and have it centralized so that anyone on the team can come in and look quickly and see what's the state of affairs for the conversations on this project, which was really useful in order to be able to keep track of things so that anybody on my project, my team, can come in and start to help out and work with these things. And I'm balancing about 100 students. So it was the only way that I can actually organize things and not get lost with them. You have access to the same infrastructure when you log into the conductor and build these things. So my first recommendation is to build a project up in order to be able to start to flesh out how you want to do things. That's where you can store your remixing map. And that's where you can have conversations with anyone else on your team, whether it's on your campus or it's someone off campus that you want to have feedback and communication about the progress of that project. We tried a handful of different technologies, existing technologies, in order to do this. We couldn't find one that was well suited for OER. So then we just built our own one. This is all open source, so if you have access to GitHub, you can download it and run it on your own server if you want. And I use it for a wide range of different project management infrastructures, and it's been a godsend. So I think there are a few questions here in the chat, or were they addressed? Like I said, feel free to intrude, especially since we have only about 20 minutes left.
What's your office Zoom link and your office hours again?
It's the same link. It's the same link as this one, zoom.libretext.org. So this actually, this goes to our private account, private room for Zoom. So if we're in a meeting or something like that, then we just don't let people in from the waiting room. So feel free to jump in from 9 to 10 o'clock Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Thank you.
Yes, Sarah.
I was wondering for like a average user who's kind of learning how to use LibreTexts, is there like a user group or a listserv where kind of with some products, there's like communities that form groups that ask each other questions and things like that? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, go to forums.libretext.org.
Okay.
That's actually what I posted here. So there's a range of forums. Right now, they're mostly focused around curation, but we have a general one that's on there too. And you can come in and, the last one was a curation question dealing with some pages that went down because they were hot linked to OpenStax, and OpenStax had changed connections, precursor technology into Internet Archive, and it's causing a little bit of chaos because we didn't harvest it properly. So you can come in, you can throw the question out, and the community can answer, or the development team can come in order to address that, or the curation team can come in and implement what's going on here. We're probably going to expand this in more detail within the conductor, part of a bigger goal in order to build communities of practice within the conductor as more faculty get involved in here for you to be able to communicate as you see fit. But the chat at chat.libretext.org and the forums, forums.libretext.org, are the two primary mechanisms for community, intra-community communications.
Okay, thank you.
So this project management open source, where do you go to get that and download it?
Well, it's a server. It's server technology. So if you go to GitHub, you can do that, but we run it on our server for you. So unless you want to customize it for some reason or another, it's probably best to just go to commons.libretext.org, or I'm going to paste your campus commons. Oh, sorry, pasted it directly in the wrong. Someday I'll figure that out. There we go. I pasted it right there. If you click on that, you will get. You come in here and just click on log into Conductor, and that's where you can create your own account.
Okay, thanks.
And everything is going to be tied together into a single account that will process everything across the board, and it will be default. So if you actually can log into here, you'll be able to log in across the board with it, and none of this issues that I need to figure out what's going on with your campus and why we're having issues coming on here. And such. The only reason I mentioned that it's open source is it gives you the ability that if you do care about dragging it and installing it on a server and customizing it, you can go about doing it. It falls in line with almost everything we do, which is open source, unless there's a reason in order to use some proprietary technology, which is our libraries are proprietary technology, not owned by us. We just customized it. So, Xiaoping, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
It asked about test banks for OER. So that's related to our homework system. So we've been collecting over 15 years, lots and lots of questions in various question banks, or we build them ourselves, either directly from the development team or via open pedagogy projects in various classes. And recently we started to build the homework system, the adapt homework system, that gives us the ability in order to host those test banks in a centralized manner, more because they come from a variety of different formats, different styles, lots of things like that, and it just became very messy in order to curate them. So we started to move them into Adapt. So Adapt, you have free access to, and I'll just, we did a series of videos or workshop that has some videos on it that you can go into, but it gives you access to the questions. You can do a search through the question bank. We have 130,000 questions, and we're expanding them greatly. They're meant to be used as part of courses that you can then integrate into your learning management system. It has adaptive learning and a handful of other features off of it. And I'll give you a link of the YouTube videos for you to be able to take a look at to see if it interests you. But again, any faculty member will always have access to being able to tap through this massively large question bank. It has a lot of questions from MyOpenMath. It has questions from WebWork, and it has a lot of questions that we have harvested and brought in. And we have a massive team that's involved in bringing of expanding that corpus to as big of a range as possible, in addition to making them algorithmic questions if possible, so that you can then just press a button and have a different question with different numbering involved in it. That's useful for delivering it to homework, but if you're looking for just questions for exams, you can similarly go through that. And again, if you request an account, you can request an account at adapt.libretext.org, and we will process that directly. So,
okay. Thank you. Great.
Abida?
Hi, so I had a question about the possibility of embedding executable code into a page, because I teach programming and I would like to have students run code and also design homeworks where students can actually go onto a server and run programs and such things. Is that currently available, or?
Yes. So like I mentioned, we have I can show you an example of the Jupyter Notebook system, which is our infrastructure for doing that. I'm just trying to find a page that I have access to. So I'm going to show you an example of that. It's my book, and I never find my book in searches because Koski's book comes up. So I embedded this in my version of the book using, actually it's particle in the box. I called them interactive worksheets. So it's a very simple option in order to embed these things that makes this into what's referred to as a Jupyter Notebook. It's really not a Jupyter Notebook. It's embedded entries into it, but it runs like a Jupyter Notebook system. So in this case here, it takes about 15 seconds to load the kernel because this is not a minor thing, but it will, once it pops up, I can then run each of these codes off of here. That's ready to do. So I'm going to run that one. I'm going to run that one. These are just preliminary ones. They're meant in order to teach people why you do these things. And then here we actually have a real widget that runs these things. And I can come in and I can do, rerun it. I don't entirely know what I just did. I manipulated the legend that's on there. Or I can restart and run these things. The way we actually embed them is we have this button right here. That's a Jupyter Notebook system, and you actually just paste the code right here, and then it saves it, and then it makes the block right there.
Perfect. Okay. So is there an option for multiple languages? I see Python and C++ an option as well.
Yeah, Jupyter actually has 30 different languages. We have only activated 5 of them. 6 of them. We have the access, and most of those languages, I'll be honest, I don't really know. I've never heard of before. Sure. But if there's a specific language that Jupyter has, we can activate it here. We just haven't had a request in order to have.
All right.
What was it?
This is great.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you.
I'm trying to remember. What was it? Pascal. I learned on Pascal.
I did too.
4+ decades ago. Yeah. I don't know if that's ever taught anymore. And it's a teaching language, but But the focus we had was more scientific programming, but it exists. I mean, like I said, it has about 30 different languages in Jupyter, unless they've expanded it recently, and they're constantly expanding. It's a beautiful system. And then you can just basically pop it in and make it work for a wide range of different purposes. This is the textbook of the future. The one issue,
I would only suggest Java, because then again, some of the 4 years in the Sacramento area, they teach Java, and we do too. So that would be another popular language to think of.
I would presume Java sits on there. I'll put it on our to-do list to ask the team in order to make sure Java is available. My understanding is just basically flipping a few switches because they're all active. They just didn't want to make them. I didn't have a need until now in order to do so. So if you send me an email with a list of languages that you would like to have for your class, we can expand it in order to make it work.
That sounds great. Thank you.
So Megan asked the question, or maybe it's a statement. I guess it's a statement. And got some shells. I think those are largely commentary.
Yeah, I think both Megan and I tried to answer questions as they came through.
Great. Thank you very much for that. The only thing that we had two things that were on the list. One was readability tool. I'm not entirely sure what that referred to. Was that?
That's actually on the student facing side or anybody facing side. Just the tool that comes out on the left menu where they can, if they have issues with color blindness or other things. I just think that's a really great.
So on this toolbar, we have this readability option. I forgot that was called readability, which gives you the ability, if you want to change the font size. I notice it doesn't actually work with the text. And if you want the margin size to be changed, if you don't actually like that, you can switch to dark mode. I'm not working. I'm not sure why it's not working. Oh, there we go. And I can reset to thing. This one here is something that we had installed. I think we're the only people who do this in here, is Beeline Reader. And Beeline Reader is sort of peculiar. And let me go to something that has a little bit more text off of here. So let's say particle in a two-dimensional box. This guy over in Stanford several years ago made this technology in order to facilitate reading of pages online for students that have dyslexia. And it's called Beeline Reader. I'm going to turn it on here. It's going to look kind of weird. So it changes the colors of the text. And the way it goes about doing it, or at least the way it's meant in order to address that, is that as someone reads this line up here, it changes the color across the board in a slow manner. So at the end of that line, the next line has the same color code. So you're able to read quickly and identify the next line that's down here, especially if you have lots of text. I know this is very equation rich, like here. So if you have a lot of text written down here, it makes it very easy in order to be able to read and go to the next line. In fact, even for non-dyslexic readers, it accelerates the reading process. And then you have the ability in order to pick it in different ways in order to be able to address how you want to go about doing that. We do have the ability to flip the switch so that if you want, you can print up the book in this multicolored format, but of course it needs to be printed up in color, not in black and white for it to make sense. And I call that a Beeline book. And such. I will mention while we're talking about this, and this is going to be scaling up soon, is the reader mode. And the reader mode is meant to be a more reader viewed perspective on these things instead of an editor view. And we're still fine-tuning some of these issues here, largely with typesetting. So this right here will pop up this book in a very simplistic way. You'll notice it also has the Beeline Reader since I had it flipped up. You have the ability in order to look at your table of contents right here in a slightly different fashion. We've been spending some time off of here, but what I particularly like is the ability in order to bring in little modals that have table of contents, not table of contents, but little modals of things that are necessary for references. So if you have ancillary materials, let me phrase that, if you have appendices. This provides the opportunity for you to see the appendix really quickly. In this case here, a periodic table, which is default on all the chemistry libraries, and then not have to leave the page that you're actually reading. And then we'll expand that, for example, to have the ability to have, we haven't activated this, I mentioned physical constants, but you can have a scientific calculator pop up in order to be able to do some quick calculations and then run with that. This will be the default view for non-editors in the near future, once we actually fine tune a few things off of here. And we're very excited about this, this aspect that's out there. But right now it's not on by default. You have to press the button that's there. And that will, all these things here will then be folded into this top horizontal bar right here under tools across the board there. But it'll have the same features, readability and etc. that's on there. So one last one that's on the list before I end, which is annotations. All our pages are set up in order to run Hypothesis by default. Hypothesis is a social annotation technology that gives you the ability in order to write content on the side of your page. So right now it's popped up with me logged in. Again, it's a different account that's by a different company, by Hypothesis. And I can come in and I can highlight this section right here. And I can then make an annotation like, I really like particles in boxes. And I post it to me, and those are my notes. So when I go back into this page, I can see what are the notes of it. So it's the equivalent of being able to write in marginalia with physical books. And there's some other benefits associated with that. You can use this as a social commentary. So you can have all your students annotate your books as you go. And that facilitates conversations. You can use it instead of a chat room, because it becomes a contextual chat room. So when a student comes in and they say, they say, you know, what, I'm not highlighting this. They can say, I don't understand this question, Prof. And it sends it to the group, and then the group then the professor can come in and start to have a commentary. So the metadata or meta discussions on the side to provide the annotation here. And that's oftentimes quite more interesting to read than the actual content in the middle. Just like when you see some page, reading the comments down below is oftentimes more interesting than the actual page itself. It's the same thing involved here. And anything that gets the students involved and engaged with the material is a plus for learning that's out there.
Question, please. Can we use this like for a dialogue?
For a dialogue with?
I teach Spanish, eventually French. So by example, talking to the student, questions, or and the public could be more than one student?
Yeah, actually you have three choices. You have public, so everyone in the universe can see. You have private, which is your own, or you can create a private group. So you can say, these are the students in my class, and then only your students will see the conversation that's involved in that.
Great.
We were working with Hypothesis a few years ago, and I've been toying with getting back to them in order to make it so this is tied in to the Libre One single account that I'm talking about. So when you sign in, you'll then automatically have access to all the infrastructure that they have in place here.
Excellent. And I use also what you mentioned, the colors for the phrase structure and all of that. Yeah. So excellent, excellent.
One of the things that
I'm loving your workshop.
One of the things that we wanted to do with Hypothesis or any of these other annotation infrastructures was to provide a mechanism to have, you know, when you have physical, you used to have physical textbooks and you have the instructor's textbook, the annotated version of it, essentially have something like that. So you can have a faculty member come in and annotate the book that's meant for other faculty in order to be able to see. So the faculty member can come in and say, okay, well, make sure you emphasize this here, make sure you emphasize this, and only faculty will see it, instructors. So you can be very, straight to the point. It doesn't look, it's beneficial in order to be able to grab and say, okay, I'm going to be reading this thing. Oh, I'm going to do this. Okay, okay, now I know what I'm going to be focusing on and emphasizing in this class. And then just basically build this sort of ancillary material that's oftentimes missing in the OER world, where people want to have these annotated textbooks. I personally have never been fond of it, but I know other people are quite fond of it. And anything that facilitates intra or communities of practice, that's basically what we're doing here, is useful in order to do so. I should revisit that initiative. It got washed away with COVID. Everything got scrambled.
Yeah.
So I'm 5 minutes over, so I don't want to take more of your time. I hope that you got, we went through an overview of being able to build books, build pages of books, editing pages of books, some of the features that are associated with these things. This can be really daunting. There's lots of features involved in here, but that's because we felt that it was very important in order to have these features in order to advance OER, advance the curation of OER, the dissemination of OER, and using these advanced technologies in the classroom. And it's because of all the hats that we wear in terms of being able to guide how we've been constructing these things. So with that, I thank you for your attention. Like I said, feel free to, if you have any questions, come to our office hours, again, at zoom.libretext.org. We have lots of videos on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.libretext.org, and that can go through a wide range of questions. And feel free to send me any emails if you have any questions. I can be responsive, sometimes quickly, sometimes not so quickly, depending upon the complexity of your question. So,
Delmar, what's your email?
Delmar@libretext.org.
Thank you so much, Delmar. And I can work with you to get the recording.
Oh, yeah. Once it gets processed and such like that, I'll give you a Dropbox and let you go with it.
Sounds perfect. Great. Thank you so much. And just for everybody, I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I've created a book from scratch where I started from the beginning and added my information in, and I've also remixed things. And it's just one of those types of things where the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it seems overwhelming right now, but it's not as challenging as you think it might be.
Yeah, it's like it's learning to communicate languages, right?
Yes,
but I'm
right.
good in human language, but the visual ones, oh my gosh.
Yes, yeah, just takes practice.
Very challenging. Yeah, but it's great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I encourage you.
I mean it. Okay.
I'll mention something, and feel free to step away, but this is connected to the Spanish. There's a lot of Spanish resources on the H5P, on our repository of H5P, which is on Studio at studio.libretext.org.
Okay.
And if you, these are widgets that can be embedded into your book to make your book more dynamic.
Okay.
They can also be part of the adapt homework system if you want to be able to do that. So largely based off of effort from Christina Moon and her infrastructure over in Chabot College. I should be looking under languages, where she's made 1,000 plus, or maybe close to 2,000 plus assessments for H5P for Spanish that can be embedded directly. And now I should search on Spanish instead of Arabic and such. So you could take questions like this one here. This is French.
French, yeah.
And you can embed it directly into your book.
Excellent.
So then your book becomes interactive and such. These things can be embedded into your homework system with Adapt, and they can also via Adapt, they can be exported to your phone with a phone app. So students can actually, you can ask them questions and have them engage with it like clickers infrastructure, and that's all freely available for you guys.
Yeah,
the app will be available in a month and a half.
Yeah, and I was copying some of your chemistry, information, because I see at least Spanish, I see it like chemistry with the verbal molecular, I teach the student, it's the verb absorbs information, etc., etc. So I see it as chemistry. Well, actually, I be surrounded by chemistry, my brother and my ex.
One last 20-second thing, and then I'll let you go. We have the Espanol library, which is our storage of all the content we have in Spanish.
Wow.
It's been done mostly with machine translation, which means it's about 90% there. So you'll read it and you'll say, well, that's kind of funky reading, but we were able to process this in one day. And our intent is in order to scale this thing up. So 90% of 100,000 pages of perfection beats 0 pages of 100% perfection. And it provides a mechanism to then go in and start to update it, because again, it's a wiki, so we can do large scale collaborative construction efforts. It's part of our global impact off of that. And since we've done this, this library is scaled massively in traffic, largely through South America, Central America, and such. So.
Excellent. Yeah, languages to talk about everything, not just literature, which I love, but yeah, excellent.
Okay, with that, I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to further conversations.
Thank you so much again. Muchas gracias.
Take care. And sorry
Bye.
for all the account information. I really don't know what's going on there. So
Well, it'll all work itself out.
sounds great.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.
Delmar, can I share a screen really quick practical
Sure.
question?
Sure.
Can I say sorry, because even if it is not my subject, but I learn.
Wait, I'm not seeing. Oh yeah, so do you see the screen right here? LibreTexts adapt screen.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
So here's the question right here. It's lost in the screen mechanics.
Can you press 15?
Yeah. So some of the
now
questions
press
work.
16?
So some of the questions work, but some do this, and so I'm not sure. I'm worried that students are going to have this.
No. This is something that needs to be fixed immediately. Let me see here. I'm going to log in as you, and I need to record this. The programmer will. I need to find out why this is the case.
It's the what's that chemistry? What's that stacks question? But I imported and copied.
I just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
I'm just going to log in as you.
With Mark Knudsen. Do you need my info?
No. Okay, this is 300, and this is chemistry homework 1, and this is number 16.
There's a lot of questions from this source that had the same problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second here. You're in basic mode. I can't replicate your issue. What
this is Mozilla Firefox.
Can you pull it up
in Chrome?
Yeah.
See if I can do it right quick.
Okay, I think I'm gonna need to leave. Thank you so much. And there is another workshop.
Do you want to just email me?
No, I'm gonna keep bothering you. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And have a good semester, Mark. Bye.
Okay.
And you too.
Okay.
Actually, Professor Larson, do you work at UC Davis?
Yeah, I'm a professor at UC Davis.
Oh, so my brother was your colleague. Well, in another department, the Crocker Nuclear Lab.
What was that?
Crocker Nuclear.
Oh, yeah. That's just a few buildings away from chemistry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I did
no-
a postcard back. Oh, sorry. I didn't
Yeah.
interrupt.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
Bye.
Take care.
Adios.
Yeah, adios. You did a postdoc at UC Davis?
Yeah, Professor Troy, biological chemistry.
Oops.
Troy.
Okay,
Okay.
so here
Yeah.
I am. I'm in the with Chrome, and I'm going to it right now with Chrome, and question 16. Is that right? Oh, I'm seeing it with Chrome. Okay, so let me show you in Chrome.
Yeah, hold on 1 second here. I can I record this?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to. Okay, so commentary, we're looking at this page here. It has some issues with not overlapping it, but this is looking at it in Firefox, and now we're going to take a look at it in Chrome, which is going to probably be fine.
I think I got the right window.
Yeah,
Okay, so here in Chrome, you can see it.
yeah, that's what I see too.
So it happens with a lot of questions I'm getting from ChemStack.
Well, it probably across the board. There's nothing unique about this question. So it's just text. So there's something Firefox is doing that doesn't want that doesn't show that text. It's super simple. There's nothing in the code that it's a one-line code. So there's really no issue off of here. I'm going to stop this recording. I'm going to send this off to the programmer and
then I also want to tell you there's a really big issue. I had
okay, hold on just 1 second. I just want to make sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Issue with Firefox. Bring text.
The H5P stuff will be editable, you said, in the future, like soon.
You can edit H5P now.
When I open the app, I can't even see the answers. I can't see.
It depends on which.
But just so you know, this LTI stuff setting up with Canvas, I sent LibreTexts somebody that form. I filled that out, sent that in a couple times, and I sent my help desk, the campus, a couple of times IT request to set up the link, and finally I got an email back from one person that told me, "Yeah, go ahead. It's easy to do it." And I said, but I tried to. It wasn't available as a external device or add-in or whatever application, external application. Then I said,
you're talking about using adapt in Canvas?
Yes. And so I emailed him back saying I couldn't do it. Then he checked out. I can't do it either. But then he sent me back a weird convoluted way of attaching it. So you have to go into assignments and do some. I could send you the procedure on that, but it was not at all obvious. And it was some kind of weird thing where you had to.
Let me check to make sure what the. I don't know if we've completed the. If we've completed it in Los. We've embedded it into Los Rios.
So he was able to link it with his setup at Los Rios at Consumnes River College, where I'm at. And so he was able to do it. He sent me a video that he made on how to do it. So I haven't done it yet. I was just too busy today. That was last night. But it was just some weird convoluted thing where you go into assignments and you blah, 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 in Canvas. And so in other words, when I went into Canvas, went to the settings, searched for applications, did everything in the world I could find, anything LibreText, find anything adapt, there was nothing there. And then he went in, he said, I couldn't find it either. But then a couple of days later, he emailed me back saying, because I actually went to one of his his campus faculty meetings and talked with him about it again because I wasn't getting any help on this. So he finally said, "Oh, okay, I figured it out." So he sent me back this weird thing. So the application's not visible in Canvas for LibreText or Adapt. You have to use this weird thing in assignments, do a search with assignments, then you select some kind of external tool, and then it will then add the app into. So just some really weird thing that's not at all obvious. And so I don't know how anybody in the whole district knows how to add your
Did you
Adapt to
did you
Canvas.
did you get the recording that we had created?
Well, I went to your workshop, I went to recordings, I did it, and I went through a lot of effort with no satisfaction at all. I'm not complaining, but
No, it
just-
needs to be fixed. So what I'm wondering about is what's on our side and what's on their side. So
well, he was able to link, but it's just some weird convoluted thing with Canvas with our Los Rios district. Okay, so it's just really weird, and I don't get why they're. But between you and I think he's resistant to it, LibreText, because he's online. He really loves Canvas. Has a lot of Canvas courses and blah blah blah. So that might be some aspect to it. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
There are people who like that, who want everything to be in Canvas. But the thing is, Canvas is designed in order to do this. That's the whole point of an LMS. We do have a video somewhere. I can't find it.
But I run into little problems like this. I got Zook's amount of time. Like this thing with Mozilla, I didn't know it was just a browser issue. Okay. But so I'm panicking, and then I'm just starting up with Adapt, and I just panic. I couldn't find, where do you find the solutions to the problems, okay, to edit those. And so, because I kept on looking at H5P things, then I finally found, well, with this WebWorks or whatever it's called, yeah, you can edit everything and see the solution, and that was really nice. So, but I didn't know that until I watch your video stuff, the fourth time, and so each time like hours.
Yeah, the thing is, we've actually been improving this over the last several weeks. So the
not your fault. I'm not complaining.
No.
It's just that you can spend a lot of time.
Yeah,
getting
and
nowhere.
we need to try to simplify that in various ways. So I'm actually that's why I was trying to find this video, or if you have if you have the
I'll
video,
send you the video.
Yeah.
What do you want me to send where do you want me to Delmar at LibreTexts.org?
Yeah. Please.
Okay, I'll do that right away.
Because then we'll take a look at and see it. I'm trying to find the video that Eric, our programmer, made in order to do this and process this, but I haven't heard anyone say that it was actually painful. So that's what I'm wondering about, is if I'm not sure. We need to set this up.
So
there are things that we can make things a little bit better if we build with the Canvas API instead of LTI, or in addition to LTI. And then it can be very, very powerful, very customized. We just have to sit down for several weeks and build a dedicated LMS app in order to be able to do that. And we probably will. We just, we have a few things that we want to do. So
there's
H5
a million apps in Canvas. There's Pearson and all, Mind Mastery and all, a million. So there's no reason that this LibreText or Adapt is not there.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm trying to figure out, is I don't know if it's something that the administrator does differently. I just need to play around with it. We do have our own Canvas app, so we can play around and see what the issues are. I just need to dork around with it. So yeah, getting that feedback is good. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to try and check the Firefox a bit on my side to see if I can actually start to troubleshoot that issue that you had.
Well, I don't know how you say it, saying, I don't know how you handle all your workload.
And I don't. I'm completely out of it.
Oh, God.
I'm not doing a great job at all. I could do a much better job if we were trying to make money and I was able to hire lots of people and such like that, that would be fine. But I'm trying to make this as cheap as possible so that the philosophy of openness and free is as followed as much as possible.
You should also ask for volunteers.
Volunteers are not a
this is
bad
really
idea,
pretty.
especially for the chemistry stuff. If you have any questions or things that come up, then let me know if you want to be able to edit it.
Well, I'm writing a book in the background about water and stuff, and so I was really pleased to find Richard Baer's book. Your library, it's really nice, and but it's really nice that anybody can write through the system now, right? Through LibreTexts. Isn't that pretty? Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, I won't hang you up anymore. So thank you very much.
Yeah, let me have that information. Any of these bumps or things that get in the way, let us know.
How do I do that?
You can do it via email. That's fine.
Okay.
At the bottom of any page on the LibreText page, if you have a problem with it, there's some feedback button. If you just write on that goes to the curation board automatically.
Okay, that's great.
So that's a way in which you can say, okay, there's something that needs to be addressed on this page. Please address it.
Great. Okay, thanks, Delmar. Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good day.